Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Problem with Authority podcast. I'm your host, Kiersten Kelley, and today we will be talking about the problem with the Don't Say Gay bill that has now been passed into a law in Florida by our governor, Ron DeSantis. Ugh. But before we jump into it, I want to do a little life update for those of you that care. March has been insane. I opened my own private practice called Liberation Counseling. That was a completely unexpected decision that I ended up having to make, but I'm excited that I did. And it pushed me to go outside my comfort zone and to start a business before I was 23. So that's been really exciting. That is why there was no episodes in March, because my part-time job turned into a part-time business. So I had to make some adjustments with, how I was living my life and all the decisions that I had to make for the business. But now I am on a more balanced lifestyle, I guess you could say. Like I have my business stuff figured out. My school social work job is, still going strong. And then now I just had to figure out how to incorporate the podcast back into that. So here I am. I'm so happy to be back. And recently I actually, which is kind of funny, I don't want to jinx it, but I just applied for another cool little part-time position. That would be really cool, but I'm not going to share it unless I get it. So if you don't hear anything, then I didn't get it. But everybody put out those good vibes for me, because this position would be really, really cool. Anyway, that's my life update. I'm now back to doing my podcast hobby, and we're going to jump into it. And I'm happy I waited to do this episode because a lot has transpired over the past month. For a long time, this was just a bill, but now it's a law. So now teachers, educators, social workers, I guess, are expected to abide by this. And I just want to jump into the verbiage in the actual writing of the law just to see what that means. Are things up for interpretation? Is this something that's going to be enforced? How would that look like? And so on and so forth. All right, let's jump into it. So the proposed Florida state bill that is supposed to affect our students and how we give services as social workers. This is the Florida bill, HB 1557, also known as the Don't Say Gay bill. So first you have in the overview of the bill, this is the language word for word, and we'll break it down as we go. It prohibits school district personnel from discouraging or prohibiting parental notification and involvement in critical decisions affecting a student's mental, emotional, or physical well-being. This seems pretty straightforward to me. As a school social worker, to me, this looks like if a student is in the middle of a crisis and we are deciding if they need to be Baker acted or if the parent needs to come up, and we have the parent sign something called a release of student form, telling the parent that we assess the student. They think they do need to go to the local mental health facility to be evaluated a second time to then possibly be Baker acted. That's how I would interpret that, making sure that parents are aware of those decisions that we would make, because an involuntary Baker Act can happen on school campus, but only licensed individuals and police officers can do that. A lot of people are not wanting to make the involuntary decision just because of the movement going on with parents right now, which, as you can see, is laid out in this bill. And there are reasons why an involuntary Baker Act would happen. For example, the parent's not answering the phone, the child is in crisis. When we are using the appropriate ways to hold a child while they are actively trying to hurt themselves or others, and that's not working, it's been an hour, they need to go. That is one of the reasons. Another reason could be that the child already actively had hurt themselves. So that goes with like 911, that goes with then also making sure that the healthcare professionals know what happened. And still, if we can't get a hold of the parent, we have to put the child's safety first. But if the parent is able to come, if a child is in crisis or having a mental health or emotional, physical issue, then, and it's not an immediate crisis where they need to immediately go for mental or medical care, then they can come, we can have a conference, talk about it, and then we go through the proper protocol for releasing the student to the parent. But it's messy. These situations are messy. They're not clean cut. And it frustrates me when people have opinions on these things when they don't work in those positions and or they aren't a parent. But sometimes the parents do frustrate me, especially the ones that rally behind DeSantis and his decision making, because I don't know, I never see, especially in Osceola County, I don't see parents involved in their students' lives, let alone their educational, mental health, physical care at the school. A lot of the time they screen our calls, they don't want to pick up, which where my school is at, I understand because it's low socioeconomics. They're struggling to get money. So I understand that the parent has to work. I get that. But even in our schools that have a higher socioeconomic status, like I don't hear social workers talking to me about parents that really are involved and understand how the school system works and cares about what goes on. They just don't want these negative effects that DeSantis is saying will occur, which don't, like, that's not how things operate, which I'm specifically referring to him talking about us teaching third graders and kindergartners about sex. Like that doesn't happen. That's not real. If anybody were to ever walk into a classroom at any time, like that's not happening. But, just creating those ideas in parents' heads that that's how we operate, and we don't. I'm sorry, guys. I'm learning how to do this whole setup thing because now my episodes are on YouTube. So I'm trying to figure out how to have my phone recording for the Instagram content that I have to put up, and then the Zoom situation for the YouTube, where I should be looking. Here I'm looking at myself on the screen, and then I'm looking at my phone, and then I'm looking at the camera on the computer. So just bear with me. I did not go to school for video content, but moving on. All right. So the next part of the law, it says that it prohibits school district from encouraging classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity in primary grade levels or in a manner that is not age/developmentally appropriate for students. And I know how I said that first one was pretty straightforward, but these can all be up for interpretation. Like, what does that mean? For example, I've had teachers come to me about students who were in about kindergarten, and the student has two moms, and in this specific classroom, this student spoke, I cannot remember the language that they spoke, but it was not Spanish, and not a lot of our students or families speak it. Oh my goodness, I can't remember. But in this little girl's neighborhood, there were other students like 3 other families that spoke that language, and they had community together because that wasn't a common language or country that a lot of our families were from. So what ended up happening is those students came back to our school, and I think they were dual language, so they could speak English and their native language, but they were teasing our little girl for having 2 moms. And they were making fun of her. They were getting other friends to make fun of her and all of those things. And the teacher comes up to me and is like, well, how do I deal with that? And, I'm like, I mean, social work responses promote unity and acceptance for all. Like, to me, that was like a no-brainer. But from the teacher's perspective, they're freaking out because they're like, I don't want to get in trouble for people telling me that I'm talking about things in the classroom they're not supposed to be talking about. And I was like, fair. So I went to admin and I was like, hey, there's this situation, because in the school district of Osceola County, I'm employed by the district, but it's good to play well in the sandbox, because if you're just doing things over administrative, then, you're not going to get a lot of things your way when it comes to working with the kids. So I went to admin. I was like, hey, how can we handle this situation? And they just looked at me and they were like, basically, the one lady mentioned how she was conservative, which I don't know why that applied to the situation. It doesn't. It applied, like, we're talking about the student's emotional well-being, and she's getting teased by these other kids for her moms being who they are, who she loves, who take care of her. But they told me, yeah, we do not have discussions about that. We do not bring that up, this, that, and the third. And I was like, oh, well, that's not helpful. Not helpful at all. And situations like this come up all of the time, and people's responses to them are to just ignore them. But then you have a child who is experiencing something that's pretty stressful and can affect their well-being, which affects their academics, which affects their socialization with their peers. Especially a little girl who like doesn't have a lot of friends because she does not speak English or Spanish. Like, that's insane to me. But I ended up just going back to the teacher and being like, how about you read a book, because they have those cute little books about acceptance and difference and unity and community. Read a book on that and just allude to like, we all need to be respectful of each other and everybody's family members and where they come from, like that. But she wasn't allowed to address it specifically, like, hey, stop teasing her for having two moms. Two moms, it's fine. You have a mom, you dad, you're being raised by your grandparents, you're being raised by your aunt. She has two moms, the end. That's where I can see this second bullet point just getting a little tricky, because maybe like, I don't know. I don't know who's going to be enforcing this. I really don't know. Like, I know there's little DeSantis minions running around Florida trying to make sure that none of us say the word, sexual orientation or gender. Like, we don't say gay, trans, none of that. Like, I know it's not happening. But my worry is that somebody's going to be made an example. And I don't know if they're going to be made an example like a situation like I just mentioned, or if it's going to be like a teacher, social worker, whoever is in a classroom talking about sexual orientation and gender, and that's going to be the person. But nobody does that. Like, nobody has time for that. Like, we don't do that. There's no sex education in our district. We don't have that. Fifth graders have the puberty. Oh my goodness. Puberty talk before they get to sixth grade at fifth grade. And that's pretty much it. So a lot of the times the people who are having these discussions with the kids are the mental health professionals, not because we bring it up. It's because the kids bring it up. Like, they come to us about them talking about their sexual orientation, like they're struggling, they're not fitting in that heteronormative lifestyle, and they're confused. Or same with like gender, like they're like, I might be non-binary, I might be trans. So we give them that safe space to discuss and explore that. But I never bring these things up. The kids are the ones that bring these things up. And that's what frustrates me about this, is because it's like, why aren't we having a conversation about why kids feel more comfortable coming to us and not their own parents or family members? Or why do kids at like such young ages know some of the things that they know? And I'm not talking about gender or sexual orientation, but I'm talking specifically about, I had a student who was older, like in the older elementary school range, and they were talking about how stressed they were about the violence that can happen against LGBTQ people, specifically trans youth. And they had watched some videos on TikTok that were very disturbing. They should not have watched them. And it traumatized them. And then it's like, okay, like, why do you have access to that? Like, why isn't your parent monitoring your access on the internet so that you don't see traumatizing things like that? But then I had to, bust some myths for them there, when it, like, obviously, like, violence can occur. Yes. But they're thinking, they're a kid. They're thinking like that always happens. That's, they're thinking catastrophically. They're thinking that if they walk out on the street. So we had to work through that. And that is such an important conversation to have. And that's what frustrates me so much, because like, this kid would just be going around thinking that they're in grave danger, which creates anxiety and creates a fear. And we don't want that. We don't want them. We want them to know that the school is a safe space that accepts them, and that we will advocate for them at any time, right? Okay, moving on to the next one. It directs social or school boards to adopt procedures for notifying. No, oh my goodness, guys, I can't talk today. I'm so sorry. For notifying. Oh my God. For notifying a student's parent if there is a change in the student services or monitoring related to the student's mental, emotional, or physical health or well-being, and the school's ability to provide a safe and supportive learning environment for the students. And I think this is the one where people are saying that, would we have to out students if they come and talk to us about their sexual orientation or gender? Honestly, I'm not doing that. So even if it was a law, I'm not doing that. So But I can see how this can be interpreted in that way. But I think this could also be interpreted, like I said before, if a student is telling me that they have suicidal thoughts, okay, I need to contact the parent. If the student is telling me that they're having really bad stomach pains, I need to talk to the parent. So, I mean, we don't know. We're not going to know until I think somebody has made an example, which is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. The next part is procedures must reinforce the fundamental right of parents to make decisions regarding the upbringing and control of their children by requiring district personnel to encourage a student to discuss issues related to their well-being with their parent or seek permission to discuss issues or facilitate discussion of issues with the parent. Listen, a lot of my parents don't talk to their kids. So I don't know. That's why they come to us, because they don't have anybody to talk to. They don't have a mental health professional to discuss these things with them. And you know what? I do. That's one of the social work values, is promoting like family and unity. Like, we never want a student to feel isolated or against their parents. We really don't. We want the families to get along. If we could have people in family therapy and everybody be on board with it and doing the work, we would love that. That would be a beautiful world. But that's not what's happening at all. And I talk to students, like, if they do come out and I'm like, hey, okay, like, have you told your parents, where are you at with that? Some of them are like, it is not safe for me to tell my parents. Cool. Got it. Oh, like, I'm working up the courage to do so. Me and the student might meet a few times to discuss how that would look like for them. But I mean, if they don't want to tell their parents, like, they don't want to tell their parents, like, my God, like, they don't got to tell their parents that they're straight. Why does it matter if they're gay or pan or whatever? Like, I don't understand. I really don't. But again, this is like up to interpretation. All right, moving on. Districts may not prohibit a parent from accessing any of their minor child's education records created, maintained, or used by the school district. That makes sense, but this is why documentation is so important. My mental health professionals, by only putting things in the notes that are important, relate to client progress. They're not super detailed and descriptive, but they give an overall, mini synopsis of the situation. But you don't need to put, oh, student loves other students. Student said that they kiss. No, we're not doing any of that. No. All right, next. Districts may not adopt procedures or student support forms that require personnel to withhold from a parent information about their student's mental, emotional, or physical health or well-being, or a change in related services or monitoring, or encourage or have the effect of encouraging a student to withhold from a parent such information, unless a disclosure would result in abuse, abandonment, or neglect. So this is where we're also getting into that. Oh, if a child comes out to me, do I have to tell the parent? Unless it would result in danger, right? So here's the thing. Social workers and psychologists and mental health counselors, if you want us working in schools, our ethics, our training is they have confidentiality with us unless they talk about hurting themselves, someone else, someone hurting them, or if they give us permission to tell an adult, right? Those are our rules. That is what we have to abide by in order to keep our licensure, all that fun stuff. So but then I guess things get different when you go into an agency like a school now, and they would tell you, oh, and also if the student tells you their sexuality or gender identity. I don't see that happening at all. When this was brought up in our social work meeting, a lot of people were against it, but then we did have the head of one of the mental health agencies we have in town be like, well, since it is a law, you do have to abide by it. There's laws out there that nobody enforces, that people don't even know about. So it's just going to be interesting, like I said, because we never have a student sign a form that says, oh, don't tell, we don't tell them, oh, if you tell us your sexual orientation or gender, like, don't tell your parent. Like, we don't do that. We also don't have them sign confidentiality agreements. It's more for us. Like, we have to abide by that. Because it's client therapist, client counselor, client social worker privilege. Like, that's what keeps people safe and allows kids to explore who they are in a, again, safe environment. And it's up to us as professionals to know what needs to be told to the parent and what doesn't need to be told to the parent. And a lot of the times, the reason why the kids aren't coming out to the parents is because it's not safe. And the kids are terrified. The parents will threaten the kids and say, we'll kick you out. They'll hit them, blah, blah, blah. So it's not safe, documented, period. Moving on. Again, how does this affect school social work? Our code of ethics clearly states social workers should protect the confidentiality of all information obtained in the course of professional service except for compelling professional reasons. Social workers' primary responsibility is to promote the well-being of clients. In general, clients' interests are primary. Social workers should not allow an employing organization's policies, procedures, regulations, or administrative orders to interfere with the ethical practice of social work. So there you go. People want to argue, oh, well, even though NASW says you need to abide by this, but now you are employed in the school district, you have to follow ours. No, because it says it right there. That answered my own ethical dilemma that I was having a few minutes ago. So there we go. It's frustrating. It's frustrating, guys. Next, we have trust. Will these policies affect the students' ability to trust in social workers? Yes, and it already has, because I have my own private practice, like I said before, and I see clients who are adolescents who are they're in the school system, they go to school, and they have told me that because of this law that they have been scared to talk about these things with social worker, psychologists, or school counselors at their school. So it's already affected that. Have I had kids at my school come up to me and say that? No. But here's the thing. I wear a beautiful little pride flag on my lanyard. And when I was having my school social work meeting about these bills, they were like, I wonder how that's gonna, are people gonna be mad about that? And when I was at one of my elementary schools, administration did have a problem with it, but I was like, I don't give a fuck. Like, listen, I'm not out here like explaining what the flag is to all of my kiddos. This is what happens. My kiddos that get it. So they'll come up to me and be like, Miss Kelley, I love your flag. I know what it means. And I'm like, period. And then my other kid, especially the little ones, they'll be like, Miss Kelley, I love your rainbow. And I'm like, oh my God, thank you. That's it. That's where that goes. But that sign has helped so many students from the elementary to middle school level know that they can come talk to me about those things and we can work it out. I'm not going to stop wearing the flag. We have Equality Florida. So right now, it's just a lot of different people at bat. We got a lot of different people at bat. We got social workers, Equality Florida, psychologists, counselors. Like, fuck this. No, we're protecting our babies. We are protecting our babies. The end. And then you have DeSantis and his parents that he's convinced to have a problem with something that doesn't even make any sense. These are the sides right now, everybody. And how will these policies impact staff? So this is a great question. I have not talked to my supervisor about this. I need to, because I've already told her I'm not abiding by the law. So the end. Like, I don't know, what are they going to come arrest me, fire me, whatever. Like, in the world of social work, if I was fired because I advocated for a kid and I stood up for their confidentiality rights that they have within my profession, I mean, I don't think that, I would be banned from the social work world. Hopefully not. Because I told my supervisor, I was like, listen, we got to go back to doing underground social work. That's what we're going to do. Like, this is stupid. And another thing, not all parents are for this. Not all parents are for this don't say gay law. They're not. One of our schools in our county, who was a big LGBTQ school, they had a huge walkout. It was beautiful and supportive of our students. Not all parents are like this. So I think the example that I'm talking about, that I'm scared that is going to, be made to say how they're going to, enforce this law, it would have to be like a very specific situation where they just, I don't even know. I don't even know, because I still don't even know how they would track that. Like, if a student came out to me and then their parent finds out that they are who they are, and then the kid says, I told the social worker, like, okay, like, what's the problem? If the child is engaging in dangerous behavior that is unsafe, yes, that needs to be told to the parent. But having a sexual orientation and gender is not dangerous. It's just part of life. Like, I don't get it. And then lastly, we have confidentiality. To what extent does this affect students' right to confidentiality? Question mark. When do students' rights come into play versus parents' rights? Question mark. Question mark, question mark, question mark. This is where we're at. Okay, so another episode I'm going to do, Maya and I did an amazing episode on critical race theory, but there was a bill that came out specifically about this as well. And I'm not sure if this bill was signed into law, but it's SB 148. That will be a different episode. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is because it's in this little beautiful PowerPoint that my coworker made that I'm referring to when speaking about this today. And this is another part of our code of ethics that this social worker put in here that I would like to point out as well. So we have another obligation in our code to engage in social and political action that seeks to ensure that all people have equal access to resources, employment, services, and opportunities they require to meet their basic human needs and to develop fully. Social workers should be aware of the impact of the political arena on practice and should advocate for changes in policy and legislation to improve social conditions in order to meet basic human needs and promote social justice. So long story short, I'm doing my job. I'm doing what I signed up to do. Come for me, I don't care. Social workers should act to expand choice and opportunity for all people, with special regard for vulnerable, disadvantaged, oppressed, and exploited people and groups. This brings me to my next point. So I'm sure you guys have heard of the Florida Health Department sending out the dumb little email about their fact sheets. And I'm going to pull it up really quick. Just give me a second. I got to rush because I have a massage at 4. Self-care. I don't want to be late, but I want to finish this episode. Okay, Florida Department. Which is so funny, guys, that the Florida Department of Health sent this out, and the Florida Department of Health also like gives us licensure to be social workers and follow our social work ethics. It just make sense. Make sense. Oh my goodness, where is it? Okay, never mind. I'm just gonna look it up on my phone. So this is what the Florida Department of Health sent out to all the girlies, okay? They sent out this beautiful fact sheet that talks about gender affirming care in young people. This is what the fact sheet looks like. Okay, can you guys see? I don't know how to do this. Okay, not working. Moving on. Okay, gender affirming care in young people. It talks about what gender affirming care is, why it matters, goes into common terms and their definitions, gives additional information with cited research about how gender affirming care is important and it does positively affect youth based on data and all that fun stuff. Then it goes into the different types of affirming care, like social affirmation, puberty blockers, hormone therapy, and gender affirming surgeries, gives definitions, gives when it's used, and all that jazz, right? So it's a beautiful little document. So the Florida Department like cites this fact sheet in their email, and they were like, due to the lack of conclusive evidence and the potential for long-term irreversible effects, the department's guidelines are as follows. Social gender transition should not be a treatment option for children and adolescents. Anyone under 18 should not be prescribed puberty blockers or hormone therapy. Gender reassignment surgery should not be a treatment option for children and adolescents. And based on the current available evidence, encouraging mastectomy, ovarectomy, all of those things will do high risk harm. And lastly, children and adolescents should be provided social support by peers and family and seek counseling from a licensed provider. So there's a lot of conflicting things here. So they sent out this little fact sheet and they're like, we're against this. And I can't remember who made the fact sheet. I think it was like from our government. Office of Population Affairs. Yeah, it was from our government, but Florida like decided to make a stance against it. And even though it has all this beautiful evidence that these things are great, they were like, nope, they're not. But then at the end says that they should seek counseling from a licensed provider. Well, if y'all seek counseling from this licensed provider, I'm going to be like, Florida's bullshit. Gender affirming care is great. And I understand when it gets more into the puberty blockers, hormone therapy, and gender affirming surgeries, like families really do have a hard time for that. And I'm not a medical professional, so I do not give medical advice. But especially when it comes to that social affirmation, that I can definitely speak on that, because that plays into therapy. And social affirmation, for those of you that don't know, is adopting gender affirming hairstyles, clothing, name, gender pronouns, restrooms, and other facilities, giving them the right, to do those things. Florida is hard, man. It's hard out here. It really is. So, long story short, that's what the law says. I have, my supervisor has not told us, oh, we have to abide by this. She's very against it. I know she is against it, but we just got to figure out how to work around these things and what it means and how it's going to come up in different situations. And that's where we lie, everybody. But build relationships with your kids. That's literally all I have to say to parents. Build relationships with your kids so they have that trust, so they know that you have unconditional love for them, and who they are is not going to change that. So that's really it. And most mental health professionals support that. We do. We really do. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming and listening. I'm so appreciative of all of you and to have this podcast. I will see you in the next episode. Bye. Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please rate, review, and share to support. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Problem with Authority Podcast, or you can follow me at Kiersten __Kelley.